The guys all ready? Hi, I'm Stuart and welcome to SIRENNET Television. We're going to be going downstairs from the main studio here, Studio 1B, down to Studio 1A. And why are we doing that? Well, in fact, we have a vehicle in from SoundOff Signal, and that vehicle happens to have a BluePRINT technology program installed on it, and we're going to actually have a very interesting video today because we have a bunch of people who have joined us to check out this product from SoundOff. So we're going to be going from me upstairs down to Chris, but before we do that, I want to let you know that you'll also be joining Dave Lingual, and David is with SoundOff Signal, and it's his first time in front of a television camera. Chris, take it away.
Well, thank you, Stuart. Thank you for joining us on a very special SIRENNET Television first in presentation. I'm joined here with our friend from SoundOff Signal, David Lingual, who is going to give us a great rundown on their BluePRINT control system. Also joined by a previous co-star, SoundOff Signal's demonstrator utility, which we've shown you some different looks at already. Hidden off in the shadows, not too shy when it comes to being on camera themselves, Devin and Danny from Star Cars, joining us as well, so they are going to gain all the knowledge and details and installation notations and specialty that tie into this system. So with that, let's go ahead and take a note from David himself, giving us a rundown on this system.
Great, thanks Chris. Like you mentioned, we're going to talk about the BluePRINT system. This was something that we started developing around 2 or 3 years ago and brought to market at the beginning of 2015. And essentially the premise behind this system was officer safety.
Okay.
We wanted to make the vehicle much more efficient, much simpler for the officer to perform a bunch of different functions that are outside the realm of the control panel, so that it'll make it easier and safer for the officer to perform his job. And we started working on this, developing this with another company, testing this out in the field with multiple departments around the country.
Okay.
And then, like I said, brought this to market at the beginning of 2015. So what we were going to do today is walk through some of the features of the vehicle, walk through some of the features that my vehicle is able to do, and then get into, with the guys from Star Cars, get into the programming and the software and how to put the car together. But another thing we wanted to do was not just make it much more efficient and safer for the officer. We wanted to have the installers be able to troubleshoot and diagnose issues that a car may have. And this way, through our software and through plugging in a laptop to the vehicle, they're able to troubleshoot the entire vehicle, the light bar, the siren controller, any perimeter lights, and see what issues that they may be having. And one of the things that, a few of the things that we have this car set up, which we're going to demo here shortly, are, we've tied into the factory high beams, the factory horn, the factory brake lights, reverse, door triggers, to have those perform different functions that the officer doesn't have to reach down, change something on the control panel, that it's just going to change lights, do different things, so it makes it much easier and safer for them.
And then, so with what you just mentioned there about BluePRINT tying into the vehicle's basically OEM functions and trigger components, so it doesn't have to be specific to the utility platform or service vehicles. So that means we can tie it into any late model vehicle the customer is using, truck, SUV, car platform?
Motorcycles.
Good to know. I didn't even think about motorcycles.
Yep. Garbage trucks. There's a whole list. There's a whole list of different things we can do with BluePRINT. And the great part about it is, for the individual departments, is what they can basically design the system. What is it you want your car to do?
Okay.
And that's all done through the programming. One other thing that the programming allows us to do is it acts as a distribution unit.
Okay.
To where it has load shedding on different. So if you're using something that's going to help, load shed or cut off certain products to save the battery, that's all done through BluePRINT as well.
So timers, voltage control,
individual
regulating.
timers, voltage control, all of that stuff is done through our software.
Okay, and then also too, in thinking about it, a component related to BluePRINT that you mentioned to me previously that we're familiar with already is when it comes to the control head, it's going to be utilizing SoundOff's energy controller. So the handheld or the flat panel control head for console mounting. And then also, when it comes to the electronics relating to BluePRINT, you're going to want to take advantage of SoundOff Signal's LED components. So like we have here, and we've shown you previously, products from the Intersector platform, fascias, overhead light bars, and the Enforce family as well. So that's going to let you tie in all the ease of the installation, everything David mentioned about BluePRINT and how it can assist you. And for me, thinking about it before you even mentioned it, I thought BluePRINT would be perfect, law enforcement, fire and rescue service, but you mentioning it for waste management and other applications, so DOT use and utility, it's a really great way to integrate just your amber and white and illumination components. So with that, got the rundown on what it can do. Go ahead, continue the presentation, dive in.
One of the first things we're going to talk about that we've incorporated with the BluePRINT system is end caps. We wanted to make it easier for the officer getting in and out of the vehicle, stepping in and out of the vehicle, that they're not blinded by the end cap of the light bar. So what we've done is we've used the factory door triggers, both on the passenger and the driver side, that when they open the door, not only does the under mirror intersector shut off, but the end cap shuts off as well. And we can do this a couple of different ways. On the passenger side, I have it instant, to where when you open and close that door, when you close the door, it immediately comes back on. What I did on this side is I have an 8 to 10 second timer to where the end cap will shut back on, give the officer a little bit of time to either step away from the vehicle or get positioned in the vehicle and be ready to go. Another thing we've done is we have tied into the factory high beams. So if I'm at a stop and I have my takedowns on and I step out of the vehicle and the situation starts to escalate and I'm outside of the vehicle and it's at night and I want to light up the whole scene, and I can just reach in, pull my high beams, and light up the whole situation. And that's accomplished by tying into the factory high beams and then having the car have a full scene to the front. When I let go of the high beams, it's going to go back to takedowns. Another feature is we have tied into what we call a panic or a blitz button, which we've put on the A pillar, to where if the officer steps out of the car and again the scene or situation starts to escalate, rather than reaching in and turning back on the control panel, turning on the siren, he can just reach in here, set the siren tone, turn on the car, and it's more of a panic button or blitz feature, to where the officer doesn't have to reach back in the vehicle to turn something on. Makes it much, much simpler. They can just reach in, turn this on here, reach in, turn high beams for full scene. Again, much safer for the officer. Two other features that we're going to talk about are in the programming today are tied in through the factory horn. And most officer accidents occur at intersections. So what we want to do is, if an officer is in pursuit and comes to an intersection, we want increased visibility at that intersection. So all the officer has to do is just tap the horn once. It speeds up the flash pattern, adds some additional white in there, gets some additional visibility. We put this on an 8-second timer. The officer is able to get through the intersection, be seen a little bit better, and then it goes back to its position 2 or position 3 spot on the siren controller. Another thing that we've added through the factory horn is if an officer is behind somebody and trying to get around them and they don't see that the lights are on or their radio's on, the car in front of them, and they don't hear the siren, the officer can hold down the horn, blast the air horn, gives them a wall of white in the front, which they will definitely see. And again, it's going to give that 8-second timer, which we can set to 8 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever we want. And then it's going to go back to the standard position 2 or 3 spot that it was in on the control panel. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at some of the things we've tied into the factory wiring on the rear of the car. One of the first things that we're going to do is, for the police vehicles, they just have your standard factory brake lights. We've taken any of the red that we have back here on our Enforce surface mount lights and we've tied in red to them. So if you just press the brake, we've added these into for additional brake lights, which traditionally in position 1, 2, or 3, those are going to be flashing red, blue. You hit your brake. If you don't have any lights on, they're going to go to steady red. Also, if you've got a multi-car pursuit and you're in position 3, and you want to alert another officer or anybody behind you, and you want to make sure that, number one, they're not blinded by the lights to not see the brake lights, when you hit the brake, adds additional brake lights, slows down the flash pattern, both whether it's on the interior traffic controller or the light bar on top, to make sure that the officer knows this car is braking, lets the foot off the brake, goes back to your position 3 mode. Another thing is if you're in a multi-car pursuit and you want to shut the back of the car off, you can do that. Everything on the front of the car, the side of the car is still lit, everything's the same. The back of the car is shut off, not to blind whoever's behind you. Another thing we're able to do with the vehicle, since you're programming not just the light bar and the siren, but you're also programming all of the perimeter lights through the software, we're able to cruise the entire vehicle, not just the light bar, the interior light bar, or the traffic controller. We can set all of the perimeter lights to a lower power, 50% or whatever you want it to be, to mark the vehicle, steady burn the whole vehicle, not just the light bar itself. Another thing is, if we're not in any position and we just want to go into reverse, you've got your factory, we've tied into the factory reverse lights to where all of the lights in the rear, we have light up for additional lighting in the back. So that way, when they're looking on their camera, lights up the whole rear of the vehicle so that it's much easier for them to see.
Well, thank you, David, for the tutorial and look at BluePRINT and how it ties into all the product on your utility here. I know I myself taken away a lot of this from the presentation thus far, making notes on how I'm planning to utilize this myself on upcoming projects. And talking with Devin and Danny here, we can't wait to utilize this police, fire and rescue, and just basic DOT and utility tie-ins. So a lot of neat ways, especially when it comes to controlling scene lighting functions. And very nice and basic and lots of key features. So with that, since I'm trapped down here with the gang, we'll continue onward. And back to you, Stuart.
Well, we've kind of finished part 1. Now we're going to be going over to part 2. Well, you won't see too much of part 2, and the reasoning behind it is that the gang are going to go into one of the conference rooms here at SIRENNET Television, and they're going to be having an in-depth briefing on the product. Now you could say, well, why aren't you showing this? Well, I don't know about you, but I've been in class over the years, and sometimes it can be a little bit tedious, to say the least, when you're looking at stuff and reading books and doing all that sort of stuff, which, by the way, is very important because Dad said so. So make sure you do your homework. But again, the objective is to let you take a look at the vehicle. So we're going to go into that area right now where they're having a little chat, and then we'll be bouncing back into Studio 1A.
Well, moving onward from our very extensive conference room training on the BluePRINT system, we're now joining our Ford utility to go back to the physical end for the training seminar. So this is going to allow us to see the various modules that tie into it and how the wiring, as minimal as it is going to be routed through the vehicle.
It just means that there's something connected to that output, but it's not drawing. So if you see open loads like those, that's not a problem. That's not an actual fault. We can right-click on it, and we can actually activate the levels without having to go in and out of the vehicle. So we want to try out level 2. You can see that the flash patterns have changed because it's a different priority. Different lights are activating. And the same with level 3. Now we have a little bit faster pattern. We added the white in certain areas. So it's as easy as that. There's no more opening the door, turning the level on, getting out. It's pretty neat. All right, so let's say you want to see exactly how dim you can get a light if you're going to do low power or cruise setting. You can go on the diagnostics tab, and let's say passenger side red. Let's test it to make sure we got it. So we know that that light is on. Let's try 60%. So you change that number, you come here, you program duty cycle. It'll send it to the central, then we can test it again. And see how much dimmer it got?
Yeah.
So we know that it still works. So let's just, for fun of it, let's see how low we can actually take that light before it stops functioning the way we need it. Okay, now this is 45. Yeah, doesn't like that. So we know 45 is too low. It won't work.
Well, it has been an action-packed and very knowledge-filled day with our friends from SoundOff Signal. David and Jonathan, thank you guys so much for filling us in on BluePRINT and everything that it can do, as simple or as complex as it is. Devin, Danny, thank you guys for joining us as well, and we'll be working with you guys on some new creations with BluePRINT and some vehicle notes alike. I, myself, Chris, thank you all again for joining us on this very special SIRENNET television episode. Back to you, Stuart.
Well, thank you, Chris, and a big, big thanks to everybody in Studio 1A, which helped put this particular video together. You're going to see, well, you may already have seen, we've kind of had a lot of fun downstairs today. So again, great thanks to the gang at StarCar, Denny and Devon, of course, two great installers. Not forgetting the rest of the gang too over at StarCar. And of course to the gang at SoundOff who came in to help us as well. We had Jonathan and we had David, and a great shout out to them too. Of course, I can't forget about Professor Chris. Did an amazing job, Chris, if I may say so. I'm Stuart. You've been watching SirennetTV, and as always, thanks for watching.